Well, hello again from the unfamiliar surrounds of Gosforth. Now, the reason I'm here instead of the training ground is that, I ran out of time to bring you this video today, and over my shoulder, Eddie Howe and the Inside's coaching team are working on the preparations for tomorrow's game at Crystal Palace, and the last thing they wanted was some guy walking around with a selfie stick capturing shape and personnel secrets. Now, I don't know if Patrick Vieira is a subscriber to these videos, but if you are, hello Patrick, I hope you're enjoying them. We've run out of time to do the videos from inside the training ground today, so I thought, I know there's foreign viewers who do quite enjoy some of the feedback is they quite enjoy seeing different places around Newcastle. So here you are on the leafy streets of Gosforth, birthplace of Alan Shearer, no less. So we'll just have a little bit of a wander through, and I'll bring you the latest news from Newcastle. And if you click on the link below, as ever, in this video, it will take you through to my story from Eddie Howe's press conference, which we've just left not so long ago. And the only item up for discussion today was the low move of Chris Wood down to Nottingham Forest. Now, this is something which, if you'd asked me a week ago, and if you'd asked Eddie Howe a week ago, certainly wouldn't have been on the radar at all. Now, what has happened is Forest have presented Newcastle with a financial package that makes absolute sense. I mean, listen, we're told on good authority that it's about £15 million to make the deal permanent, and the criteria to be met for that to be the case, I think, are weighted heavily in Newcastle's favour. I think it's only going to take a couple of games. Forest don't have to survive for that move to become permanent. So, yeah, I think if Chris Wood plays a handful of matches, there is an obligation to make that move permanent for £15 million. And when you consider Newcastle paid £25 million for Chris Wood 12 months ago, and they did pay over the odds. It was a needs-must deal at the time. To recoup £15 million of that, and to remove a player who would have been on a decent wage from the wage bill in terms of everything that means with FFP, this deal was just too good to turn down financially for Newcastle, and I get that. And as a guy who covers the club, an observer, I certainly won't be, writing anything protesting against that. I understand why they've done it. Now, the other side of the story is, and this is the one Eddie Howe presented this morning, and which the link below will take you through to, Eddie was quite strong, and he said, if we fail to replace Chris Wood, that will leave us, quote, dangerously short. And for Eddie to go that strong in a public forum, I thought was quite telling. He said himself, that 3 or 4 days ago, he certainly wasn't looking to remove Chris Wood from his number. And bearing in mind, this is a player who, while he's got his limitations, and I don't think he's been great in recent weeks. In fact, I think, his performance has actually come off a little bit in the past couple of matches. He has figured in all but one of Newcastle's games this season, so he is a player who they use, who they need, and he does do a certain, maybe what I've said there is a little bit unfair, because he does satisfy a certain job, and what you cannot question about him is his character, and certainly what he brought to the team last January. He will always have. He came into a losing team 12 months ago, and they embarked on, what was it, a 7-8 match unbeaten run with him starting every game and playing every minute. He will always have that. He'll always have that legacy. Whenever he comes back to Newcastle in the future, I think he's a player who will always be cheered by supporters, and rightly so. But does this deal make sense now in the isolation of the package presented? For me, absolutely yes, 100%. I think you've got to do it now. Now the question is, of course, who do they bring in? And they've left themselves 11 days to do it. What they won't do is, they won't go out and sign another Chris Wood type. It won't be just a short-term deal to satisfy that gap in the squad. They'll look to accelerate summer business. This was always the message from Dan Ashworth and from Eddie Howe as well. January will be a month whereby they know what they want to do in the summer. If we can do some of that during the course of this month, the winter window, then okay, great. But they're not going to sign players just for the sake of it. Go out and bring in, for example, another 25 to 30-year-old loanee just to fill the gap vacated by Chris. So I think they'll be looking at a younger forward, but tellingly, it won't be someone who can't play either. I don't think it'll be a 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old from abroad who perhaps can't come in and hit the ground running. It'll be someone who Eddie Howe wants ready to come in and play the games Chris Wood did. And as I said, that so far this season has been all but one match. Now, I think as well, this deal might not have happened had Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak both not been fit. And for the very first time, with those two at the club, they now are available for fixtures together and looking good as well. You know, I thought when Isak came on last weekend against Fulham, I thought he changed the game, and Eddie might just have hit upon something whereby Isak playing off Callum Wilson in that 4-2-3-1, and that again was discussed this morning. He might just have hit upon something there. So yeah, we'll see in terms of names coming in. Well, you know, all of our focus recently has been on trying to identify the midfielder who Newcastle want to sign. The forward areas we'd looked at, you know, Wood plus Wilson and Isak, and didn't think that was going to be an area what they were going to address this window. So yeah, now it's our job to go digging and bring you those names. In terms of midfielders, now Bruno's injury, this was news we brought you earlier in the week. Bruno's injury isn't as bad as he's feared. Eddie Howe confirmed that the day that he thought Bruno left the stadium last weekend fearing he'd suffered serious damage. Now, the Mail brought you the story on Monday, I think it was, that the scan result was positive. We still don't have an exact time frame, but I'm led to believe it is somewhere, you know, in the region of a week, perhaps weeks, but certainly not looking at a serious absence in terms of months or season ending, as I think some people perhaps feared it might have been at the weekend. So yeah, but midfield to that end, you know, still does remain. Certainly 3 or 4 days ago, central midfield was the priority. We were hearing different names. Now, you know, we reported Ruben Neves last week down at Wolves, and while Neves is on the list, he is a player they like, and if a deal presented itself, would they act on it? Well, yes, they would, but I just don't think Newcastle think the deal is going to become viable on that one. You know, Wolves won't want to sell. There will be other suitors in there, and you know, even though he's only got 18 months left on his deal, his contract down at Molineux, I think they would still want a pretty hefty price, so hefty fee. So, and the same goes, you know, Scott McTominay as well. You know, we reported earlier in January he's a player with admirers. I think Eddie Howe chief among them, and I think conversations were had without a loan offer per se going in, but conversations were had. The feedback they got back was that Manchester United weren't necessarily willing to let him go this month. So that is one name. You know, another, who else is there? There's Conor Gallagher down at Chelsea, who were told, you know, Newcastle like, of course, but they don't want to. Sorry, Conor himself doesn't want to go. Who else have we got in midfield? I'm trying to think now. That there's the guy at Boca Juniors, Alan Valera, I think it is, who, you know, again, we've been told, yeah, he's on the list. But is that a sort of deal for January? I'm not entirely sure. Yuri Tillemans as well at Leicester, someone I've spoken about at length before. Now, again, I use this phrase, he's on the list. They like him, but will Leicester want to let him go? Bearing in mind their form has fallen off a cliff since they came back after the World Cup. So again, you know, all of these players who Newcastle like, and you know, different people we speak to admit to being interested in, none of them are really presenting themselves as viable options at the moment. So yeah, we'll have to see on that front. But for now, I think the focus has definitely switched to what they're going to do in terms of bringing in a replacement for Chris Wood. Other little newsy bits to emerge from today: Matt Targett, John Joe Shelvey injuries. They've probably both got around 3 weeks to go before they're available again for selection. Elliot Anderson had a calf problem. That doesn't seem too bad either. So yeah, things clearing up slightly on the fitness front. But the biggest news in that regard, of course, was not losing Bruno Guimaraes this week for any length of time. So yeah, guys, that was a quick update. I brought you into Gosforth Park now, which I hope you've enjoyed. So there'll be plenty more coming up this week. You know, it's a really big week for Newcastle, down at Crystal Palace on Saturday night, followed by, you know, I'll be down at Southampton as well, bringing you a vlog of my trip down there and thoughts post game as well. So plenty coming up over the next few days, and certainly the rest of this month promises to be really busy and quite exciting now. You know, having thought that we might have a relatively quiet month, I don't think that's going to be the case now. Chris Wood has gone. Newcastle need to act. They need to bring somebody else in, because, as you know, history tells us, Callum Wilson, as great a player as he is, isn't necessarily reliable from a fitness perspective, and Alexander Isak is only feeling himself back in after a very serious injury. So yeah, watch this space, click on the links, keep on reading, keep on watching all the rest of it at all the usual Daily Mail platforms, and I'll be back next week with another video update. Okay, take care, guys. Bye bye.